we had the idea to talk about store-exclusive cigars. So this cigar is Nicaraguan binder and filler.
This is my favorite cigar in our humidor. Cigar availability had been the number one concern. COVID caused this boom where these companies were just not forecasting out.
Yep. These rollers are leaving and going to other countries. They still don't have tobacco. Cuban cigars aren't available right now because everything is going to China.
Ethan, episode 3 Between Two Burns, man. We've got 2 in. What do you think?
It's good. We've learned something, though.
We've learned a very, very important lesson, which is plug your equipment in and don't rely on batteries.
It is very unfortunate what happened last episode, but of course we appreciate everyone that stuck with it. We've had good feedback on it. It was the best part of the episode because we'd had a couple drinks, so yeah, at least there was a little bit of comedy there to keep people entertained.
Yeah, now, neither of us expected to go for 2 hours.
That's what happens when you start
drinking. Yeah, we looked up and suddenly 2 hours had passed, and the whole thing is. But it was a lot of fun. We got to pair some things together. Got to try some bourbons of yours that you wanted me to try. We called out some of our buddies who have let us know that they don't particularly like being referred to as Milk Guy and or Opus Guy.
I just can't wait for Milk Guy and Opus Guy to come on this podcast.
For everybody who listens and who now has heard Milk Guy and Opus Guy in 2 episodes, you're going to get a chance to meet them, we promise.
Absolutely. It very soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
Now, Milk Guy might take a little convincing.
He's definitely going to have to be convinced.
We know Liquid Courage does him well.
Liquid Courage does him well. We get a little bit into him. We may have to... We've never had to institute the bleep button.
The Fiverr guy, our editor-in-chief here is going to have to...
put a little bit of the beep in there. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we don't advertise this as a kid-friendly podcast, but there's a limit to everything. We're trying to keep this non-NC-17 here.
That's exactly right.
All right, bud. So episode 3, we're going to do some stuff today. We want to talk about some topics that have kind of come up over the last month or two that we've noticed in the business, right?
So, we were talking about the election and everything. We're not going to talk about that. We're not talking about politics
off it, baby.
But it's a bit of a state of the union of the cigar industry.
That's right. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I know normally we start out with what we're smoking, but I think that's going to be a good segue into what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking Treyana's Cabernet Sauvignon, Napa Valley. Great wine, daily drinker for me. Like it a lot. It's you poured it for me out of the shop. One of my favorite bottles. What about you?
So I am drinking the Wild Turkey Jimmy Russell 70th birthday bourbon. It's a bottle that I have been searching for about a month now. If you don't take anything away from this episode, the best piece of advice that I can give anyone listening is get you a boss who lets you go to the ABC store just during the day. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you for that.
You're welcome. I told you earlier this. I'm not sure I had much choice in it because you were basically a Looney Tune cartoon.
That's
and
fair.
You left a dust ball behind you when you ran out of the shop. But listen, I know you guys love that stuff. It's never a problem with me when you get it. Especially like you guys teach me about this. We talk about in the last episode, I'm not a bourbon guy. Even though bourbon and ginger is my drink, yep. I do not partake in bourbon neat on the rocks, without it being mixed in something. And you guys are introducing me to this stuff. It's like a lot of things. It takes some getting used to. Things I do and don't like. I wouldn't say that I don't like this one. It is on the higher proof and spice level that I would gravitate to, like we talked about last time, but it's really good. And obviously, like you told me, it's something that's very hard to find.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know around here if it was allocated or not, but it was made for Jimmy Russell, the master blender at Wild Turkey's 70th birthday. It is 101 proof, which is their signature proof for their Wild Turkey 101 that everybody knows, but it's an 8-year bourbon. It's got great spice to it. It's got a great sweetness. We got to come up with a name for our camera guy. Camera guy.
Camera guy.
Yeah. Camera guy said that it had a sweet tea sweetness to it. I can get behind that. So, yeah, great bottle. If you see it, it's $49.95 around here. Worth every doggone penny. I bought 2 bottles. So I'm excited to be drinking it tonight.
And actually, it's a pretty good segue into what we're talking about today, right? It's qualifies as limited edition, right? Or I mean, it's not a store pick. Like you see this in the bourbon world. We're gonna kind of approach that topic today with cigars, but in bourbon, you hear these things called barrel picks.
Yes.
Store picks. So that's literally a store and or some sort of retailer, or in a lot of cases, customers, right? Enthusiasts who can go to these distilleries and pick out a barrel.
They get a barrel and they bottle it. You know, the ABC store I went to get this had 4 or 5 different ones. Some Elijah Craig, some Woodford. You know, we had the honor of playing with Bill Bender of Bender's Stash when he came up to do some barrel picks with a bourbon group that was local. So it's really cool. But yeah, you're right. This is different from that. This is not a barrel pick. This was a national release, but limited. I don't know how many bottles they made, but it was a much more limited release.
Yeah, and it's something that is not going to be around forever. At least not new supply of it, right?
Correct.
There's going to be collectible bottles always circulating around, but it's not going to be something you're going to see continuously produced year after year after year to commemorate a
70th birthday.
Yeah,
only 71.
Special occasion.
Yeah.
That's right. You are only hey, math guy.
So, but to circle back to what you just brought up, you know, we were talking on Monday, and something big happened last week that impacts us differently than it does other retailers in the country. And that's the fact that My Father Cigars is bringing back El Rey de los Habanos.
Yeah.
And so we had the idea to talk about store-exclusive cigars and how that process works, what you can do with that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, and that's what we're smoking tonight. That's why we didn't talk about that first. We're going to be smoking the second rendition of El Rey de los Habanos.
That's right. So let's break it out.
So this cigar is Nicaraguan binder and filler. It's made by the Garcias, and I'm going to talk about the history of this cigar in a little bit. But this cigar was made exclusively for us back in 2014. It was brought back. This was, like I said, the second time it was done. It was an original blend of pepins, and like I said, I'll talk about that in a minute. But it was reblended for us, and when Pepin did it, he said that it was the answer to the industry that he can make a medium-strength cigar that has full bodies of flavor. And the reason he said that is because, like we've talked about before, my father is known for making very spicy, very strong cigars, especially back then. And when this cigar came out 10 years ago, it was a medium-strength cigar, but it was very full in flavor.
Yeah, and that is exactly how I would describe this cigar. It is a spot-on medium cigar with a whole bunch of flavor. Now, caveat here, this is my favorite cigar in our humidor.
Really?
100%.
I did not know that.
Yep, it's absolutely my favorite cigar because it just, for me, it touches so many bases. You know, I don't mind very full-bodied cigars, but it's not what I gravitate to all the time. I like a more medium cigar, but you get everything that you want out of a Nicaraguan cigar with this cigar without it being overly full. I get, anytime I have a glass of wine or coffee with this, you can get, coffee always gives me really like floral notes out of this. You can really hit the spice. Now listen, it's 2024. These have 10 years of age on them. And it's going to be super sad. We do not have many of this. We are left on the Churchill size, and that's it.
That's about, what, 20 boxes,
and
25
I think it's,
boxes?
yeah, 20, 25 boxes. And this was a big run 10 years ago of these cigars. This was a whole line coming back.
Yeah, I'll talk about that here.
Yeah.
We're going to have a history lesson with
a little
Ethan
bit of
today.
a history with E. And it's got 10 years of age on it. Anytime you take one of these out of the cellophane, the cello is, it's a picture every time you take one out. And it is my favorite cigar in the humidor. And it has been for a long time, to be honest with you.
So I have a storied history with this cigar too. I'll never forget working the event when we released El Rey de la Habano here. Pepin came in, their roller was here.
I was here, yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. And that was the only time I've ever met Pepin, a true legend in the industry. And as you know, he doesn't travel much anymore. So the opportunity to do that has pretty much passed unless you get really lucky. But that day I smoked multiple of these cigars, and I was still in college at the time. I was working part-time here. And for whatever reason, this cigar became my driving back and forth to college cigar. So really? I would buy boxes of Toros from Larry, and I would light one up when I left my house, and I went to school in Lynchburg, Virginia, which was about an hour and 45 minutes away. And by the time I got to the Virginia line, I'd finished one, I lit up another one, and by the time I was about 10 minutes out from school, I finished up the second one. And for whatever reason, this has always rang true with this cigar, the construction was perfect. You know, when you're riding in the car, you got wind blowing,
sure.
I had the sunroof open. It didn't matter. This cigar, perfect every single time.
This cigar was crafted perfectly. I have never, ever had an issue with any of the cigars, and I cannot remember a time with a customer having a single issue with any one of these cigars. They're done so well. I mean, it's perfect.
So when we say that the Garcias are bringing El Rey de la Habano back, the news article broke this week that they are actually reblending this cigar, and they're going to be making it for TAA. TAA is a group of some of the best retailers in the country. They get exclusives done for them sometimes, so it's going to be exclusive to them to start, and then maybe available nationally next year.
At least the way it read was nationally next year, yeah.
The interesting thing about it, though, is it is a completely different blend. Just like it was when we got it made for us the second time. Completely different blend from the first time.
Yeah, that's important to note. So this will be the third iteration of the cigar. The first one, I believe, and everybody can fact check me, and I apologize if I'm wrong, but I think it was 2005.
I believe
was the first year.
It was 05,
and it was their
roughly.
First release, if I remember correctly.
It was one of the first cigars Pepin.
Yeah. Yep. Made in that store front, if you will, in Florida.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in his history lessons with you.
History lessons later. And that was a Nicaraguan Puro back then. This one has the Ecuadorian Habano wrapper on it. And then this third iteration is even...
It's a Sumatran Maduro wrapper.
Right. So
completely different.
Right. Same in name, but far, far different in complexity and construction.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. So let's talk about store exclusives for a second. So in my opinion, there are three different types of store exclusives. The reason I say that is because number one is the store exclusive that someone or multiple people from the store actually go to the factories and they help blend the cigar.
Participate in the construction,
and we have that. We're thankful to have that through Aganorsa with La Colonia. Went down to Nicaragua, blended it with the late Arsenio Ramos, got it to where we wanted to be, had a flavor profile in mind, bada bing, bada boom. And that cigar and that blend is ours or yours. You know, you own the rights, you own the blend. Aganorsa cannot sell that to anybody. They cannot reblend it, rename it, nothing. La Colonia belongs to us.
That's right.
El Rey de los Habano, a little different. So after we went to La Colonia, or after we went to Aganorsa and did La Colonia, and the Garcias found out about it, and there's a story there that we'll talk about here in a minute. They wanted to do something for Larry, the previous owner of the Pipe and Pint. And so they said, we want to make El Rey de los Habanos for you. So this wasn't the same thing. Nobody went down to the factory in Nicaragua and helped reblend El Rey.
No.
Now, there may have, I wasn't privy to this. There may have been some samples that were sent. Larry and some others may have been able to pick the blend.
That'd be a good question for him next time we see him, too, is if that was involved in the process.
Yeah. But once the blend was picked or whatever they sent was it, that was it. It was banded, boxed, and the initial buy-in was 250 boxes of 5 sizes. There was a Corona, Robusto, Toro, Torpedo, and the Churchill that we're smoking right now. So that's the second type of store exclusive. You're not involved in the blending process, but now you have this blend made by a factory.
Yeah, premium blend typically, right? Something a little bit commands a price that you would expect.
And then the third store exclusive which often falls on the less expensive side of things, is the store exclusive that's a cigar that's already being produced that they're just putting your band on.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find a lot of customers refer to that as like the house blends.
Yes, and we have that.
Yeah,
We have that as well in our pipe and pint banded
I would say
stuff.
that all good, I don't want to be ill about it, but good tobacconists and stores have that stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
They reach out to every avenue to provide for the customers. That cigar for us fills a very specific need from our customers. It's inexpensive, but it's a long filler cigar. It is premium tobacco, but we're able to get it at a price with a very modest band on it with our logo that we're able to sell it either as a bundle or as a single that lets people who maybe can't afford something in that $9, $10, $11 range, something good to smoke consistently.
Correct. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing to see when it comes to store exclusives, because we're going to talk about another one tonight that we're not going to be smoking. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because the cigar industry is so fascinating in that you would think a store exclusive is literally exclusive to that store and they own the rights to that blend, but that is oftentimes not the case.
No, very rarely I would think it's the case.
I think we have an anomaly in La Colonia that we own that blend, we own that brand. Whereas this, the Garcias have been talking to us for years now that they may bring El Rey back.
Yeah, we were surprised when we saw the news in the sense that, wow, it just came out. We're not surprised in the fact that it was coming down the pipeline. They had given us notice that, hey, this is something, pre-predicated that we were probably going to be using the name again. I don't think it was ever intended that the blend was ever going to be the same.
No, it can't
it's a
be.
shame.
It's 10 years old, too.
Yeah, there's nothing in this cigar that can be replicated without it aging for 10 years. I don't think it could ever be replicated. So, it's a bummer, but it's also really cool. Mm-hmm. Because, like we said, there's 20 boxes upstairs. Let's be honest, there's 18 boxes upstairs because one of those boxes is mine and one of those boxes is yours.
It's a piece of history, literal cigar history.
Cigar history, and it means a lot to us.
Yep.
And it would be really cool to have that in another 10 years or whatever. It's going to be really, really hard not to smoke through it. I'm going to have to put it under probably I don't know if the bank does humidified safe deposit boxes or not, that you can throw away the key.
You give me your key, I'll give you my key, and then we'll smoke each other's
boxes. Go in there
That's
once
why.
a month and drop a Boveda in a safe deposit box. But it's just not something you can replicate. So we weren't surprised that it was happening. A little phone call would have been nice. Like,
It would have been a little heads
just
up.
so you guys know and you see it on social media and stuff like that. But it's theirs. They don't have to do that. I understand. But yeah, they had given us some advance notice, like, hey, we were never going to be able to reorder it or anything like that. So it's a unique set of circumstances, like you said. Like that is what I would consider when you think of store exclusive. Like we talked about, La Colonia borders on and is more onto the brand ownership piece of it, the very upper end of the store, because we could certainly take that out and distribute it in any store we wanted if we chose to, if we were producing it like that, which we're not. We use the name. We have La Colonias in here all the time under different things, whether it's limiteds and annual releases. And then with the house blends, as I think people would refer to them, kind of on that lower spectrum.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. One thing that I didn't bring up and goes to what we'll talk about here in a minute as well is store exclusive sizes for blends.
Yep.
So that's something else that you see specifically comes to mind JR's doing, right? So they had their own size of El Guance, which we've talked about before. They had their own size of the Lunatic Torch, if I'm not mistaken. They've had their own sizes of a lot of different cigars, and it's the same blend that we sell in our humidor, but it's a specific size that's just available.
Unique to them.
To that store.
I think you're seeing this a lot more, especially when it comes to the bigger retailers, JRs, CI, Holtz, whoever it may be. It's not a blend or cigar specific to them, but a popular cigar where they're getting a unique shape and size.
And from a logistics standpoint, when it comes to getting in the schedule at the factory, dealing with actually making a blend, it's so much easier for these companies, and by companies, manufacturers, to do that for a retailer than it is for them to actually come up with a blend for that retailer.
Yeah.
Like exponentially easier.
And I think something that we may end up discussing later in this episode too is we want to talk a bit about cigar availability. That goes to it, right? There's a whole host of factors that are going into why you may or may not be able to get your favorite cigars right now. But employees and rollers is one of those. So manufacturers, you're going to see putting an emphasis or a priority on things that they already make.
Yeah, they make more money on it.
I mean, they're going to make more money.
That's their
business.
lines
of cigars, more so than a completely offset cigar for one retailer specifically.
These limited edition products too, it's, you know, these cigar companies are rolling thousands and thousands and thousands of cigars every day, and some of these limited editions are only, you know, they make 5,000 total cigars, and it's like, from that manufacturer perspective, why would they bastardize their own production just to make 5,000 cigars for this retailer that they're not going to make as much money on if they'd have just made their own cigars and sold them regularly?
That's right.
So the point being is that we get it. You know, we're not mad by any stretch at the Garcias for
not at
bringing
all.
back. All right,
No.
I can't wait to smoke it and see how different it is for this. And personally, am honored to have had the opportunity to have this cigar exclusively at our, let's be honest here, little store in North Carolina. Yeah. You know, I mean, my father's cigars has 2 #1 cigars of the year in Cigar Aficionado, and they made us a cigar.
It's cool to think that we've been the caretaker of this brand for the last 10 years, right? It didn't go away. You know, we sell this cigar through our website to people all over the country all the time.
All the time.
You know, East Coast to West Coast, people are buying it off the website. You know, we've sent it to friends who you know in the Northeast and stuff like that. They give it to somebody, and then it catches on, and we see these orders come in. So
yeah, we talked about Saints and Sinners. The Saints and Sinners guys found out about it. The Tatuaje fan club.
That's right.
And those guys started buying it up. I mean, then and the ability to be able to share it with other people has been really cool.
It's very cool. I mean, to say something, we had something that just you can't get anywhere else, and that they think enough of it, different blend or not, to bring it back that's pretty cool. I mean, it's a pretty cool thing to think of us intertwined in the cigar world.
Absolutely.
Right. You know what I mean?
There's not a lot of shops that can say that. Let's be honest.
Not at all.
And it's always funny to talk about this cigar and to talk about La Colonia because, let's be honest, house blends oftentimes have a bad name because they are getting really cheap, mix-filled, bundled cigars. And that's why our house blend, we tried to make sure it was different, a super premium long filler cigar that we could deliver at that price.
Yep.
But you're not jeopardizing quality just for that price point. And so it's always funny because when people come in the store and they're like, hey, what do you have that's your house blend? What do you have that's exclusive to you? It's like, well, we have El Rey de los Habanos. It's not a house blend, but it kind of is because we're the only place you can get it.
You're not
and
getting
then
anywhere
explaining to the people like what makes it so special is always something fun for me to do. And I think the other people that work here would kind of echo that a little bit.
Oh yeah, and then once somebody has it, right? Once you get a chance to smoke it, and you realize where it falls in this hierarchy, it's a completely different experience than the space filling house blend kind of cigar when you think of that, because that just serves a purpose of that.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm with you. The experience of smoking the new one, whenever we get to smoke it,
I got some high expectations.
Yeah.
Lofty
expectations.
I mean, very lofty.
Yeah.
And I mean,
but it's going to be so drastically different from this.
It's a Sumatran wrap relief. This is Ecuadorian Habano.
Mm-hmm.
It's Maduro. This is Rosado.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like the one thing I'm interested to see and this goes back to talking about Tatuaje and my father and their connection. The one thing I'm interested to see is that Tatuaje has been putting Sumatran wrapper leaf on some limited edition cigars recently, and those cigars have been incredible.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Saints and Sinners box for this year, we talked about that. I got it. I smoked through the cigars in it. I think, and this is not confirmed, but I think that one of the cigars in that box had a Sumatra Maduro wrapper on it, and it was freaking awesome. So if that's the same wrapper leaf that they're using on this cigar, then we are in for an absolute treat.
Yeah.
But
and you take,
we'll see.
Yeah, you take the. I haven't had anything that I haven't been excited to smoke and disappointed with in the My Father stuff that's come out over the last few years. There's things I like more than others, certainly.
Sure, but that's the price point involved. We could. That's a whole nother podcast episode.
And that's the truth with anything. You just, if you're making every one of your cigars fits the same person every time, then you're probably not really expanding your offerings out enough.
Absolutely, and going back to bourbon, we see that in the bourbon world, right?
Yeah.
Wild Turkey makes Wild Turkey 101, which is one of the best-selling bourbons on the market. And as someone who likes bourbon, it is a great value bottle, but it doesn't appeal necessarily to those that want something that's more barrel-proof, or they want something that's actually a little bit lighter or more aged. And so, you can have the bread and butter and still do these limited edition one-off things that appeal to that consumer. And you're right with My Father, nothing that's come out that I can think of off the top of my head, whether it be La Union or Flor de las Centillas 10th anniversary or Don Pepin 20th anniversary or Jaime Connecticut or 100 Años or Jaime, the list goes
Vintage.
on. The vintage is
Vegas
a great
Cubana's
example.
coming back, and Fonseca and all that.
Yeah, all of them have been good. And it may not be your favorite cigar. And by your, I don't mean you. I mean the consumer's, favorite cigar.
Yeah.
But from an objective perspective, they are good cigars. But as we know, cigars are subjective. But the nice thing about it is that there is something that has come out for everybody. Vintage is medium. Vegas Cubanas is medium. The Cien Años is more full-bodied. The limited edition is more full-bodied. If you're more of a high-end collector, you've got La Union, you've got the anniversary. So they are catering to a very wide audience.
And eclectic audience. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. But then you get into, you say there's something for everybody. And the other exclusive we want to talk about is something not really for you and I.
No.
But it's
number one asked about cigar in the last year, maybe two.
And not even close, right?
No, not even
we've
close.
gotten asked, whether it's in person, email, through the website, phone call. This has been the number one asked about cigar, and that's Deadwood's The Girl with No Name, the new one.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about the not owning the rights to the name thing, right? So Deadwood's Tobacco Company is a shop that is in Sturgis.
Sturgis, yep.
And they came out with Deadwood's initially, and they had the rights to it, but they couldn't get the cigars. They blew up on them. Drew Estate couldn't keep up with demand, and so what happens? Drew Estate decides to take it national. And I heard a story one time that once Drew Estate decided to take it nationally, Deadwood's actually couldn't get it. They couldn't get their own cigar.
At their own store?
At their own store.
I've heard that story too. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I've heard that.
It's crazy to think about, but when we look at our sales reports and everything, at the top of the list every single year consistently for the last 4 years, Fat Bottom Betty, Sweet Jane, Leather Rose, Deadwood's Tobacco. And so what happens is Drew Estate decides that they're going to come out with a new Deadwood cigar, and that's The Girl with No Name. But what they do is they give it, if I'm not mistaken, as a store exclusive to Cigars International. So the only way you can get this cigar now is at Cigars International. I believe it was a Toro size initially, and the only way that Cigars International was selling it was by the box. So we had people start coming in. You got the new Deadwoods. You got the new Deadwoods. No, we don't. The only place you can get it is CI. Well, then what happens? Drew Estate decides that CI can have the Toro, but we're going to give the Robusto to Atlantic. I actually don't know who got the Robusto, but we're going to use Atlantic, right? Then they decide that they're going to come out with a Petite Corona, and that goes to Fox Cigars. Then they decide they're going to come out with a Connecticut. That goes to JR Cigars. So now there's multiple places that you can get this cigar, but there's different sizes and different versions of it, and the only place that you can get it is at these specific retailers. So this has gone from a store exclusive to now stores having exclusive sizes like we've talked about.
Yeah.
And now they've taken it nationally with a size they've never done before,
right,
which is a 7x44 Lonsdale, and is something that we and many retailers across the country can offer.
Yep.
And it's so fascinating to study the evolution of that and compare it to what happened to El Rey and just how the store exclusive and the industry works with these things. You know, as a retailer, it's, I don't want to use the word frustrating to see sometimes, but the loyalty that you would think some of these brands would have to their retailers isn't there as much as you think it is, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw any manufacturers, surely not trying to throw Drew Estate under the bus at all. This is business. We're all trying to make money.
We're all in the business to make money.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from. You want them to have this level of commitment to us. And when I say us, I mean retailers like us. Because we're constantly battling that retailer, right? The big online, Fox, I don't, again, I'm not knocking those. We'd all love to have a company that gets to that point. But you want it to be like that. But listen, there's thousands of shops like us, and you just can't, it's impossible to make that commitment to every last one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, at the end of the day, like we just said, this business is about making money. And if a retailer comes to Drew Estate and says, "Listen, we're going to give you $250,000 and buy how many ever boxes of this cigars if you give us this size exclusively," that's $250,000. Drew Estate's not turning that down.
And let's be honest, we talked about this with some people before. Drew's owned by a conglomerate these days.
They have shareholders that they have to keep happy.
That's correct. They've got people that they've got to report to make sure that the bottom line is where it needs to be to keep that stuff moving forward. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Absolutely. And, it's just funny, though, as a retailer looking at what happened to Deadwoods. And now Deadwoods is working with CLE to have another flavored cigar that is theirs. And it's like, I couldn't imagine being in their shoes and having a cigar that was theirs that has their name on it taken away from them.
And
maybe they should have had some better lawyers and some better copyrights and trademarks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's tough.
Yeah, sold in something you had your hand in, sold in every store in. I mean, let's be honest.
It's not only is it sold in cigars in the world,
it has dominated that segment of cigars since it came out. Yeah, I mean, it came in with a bang and hasn't let up. I mean,
Cuba Cuba used to be one of the number one sellers in the world. It was like Cuba Cuba and Macanudo Portofinos, and maybe it still is. But I know in our shop specifically, we hardly sell acid ever anymore. It is Deadwoods,
Deadwoods all the time.
Deadwoods.
And we used to sell acids a ton.
Absolutely.
It's not just something like it kind of always was kind of in the middling. Like it has just taken that segment by storm. Like nothing you've ever seen, really, at least certainly in the cigar business.
No, I mean, and COVID had a lot to do with that. The fact that it's a sweet cap and it's appealing to new cigar smokers had a lot to do with that.
New cigar smokers, female cigar smokers, we see smoking Deadwoods a lot.
The fact that Natural went away, or La Rutan as they
but I almost think that the cause and effect of that was not, hey, Natural went away and Deadwood was able to pick that customer base up. I think that Deadwood dominated that segment to the point it's like we shouldn't be making this anymore. We should be, the rollers that are making this should be making Deadwoods.
And it's funny to see with Deadwoods how many of the original Natural sizes are made. So like the Dirt is the same size as the Leather Rose Petite Corona. The Dirt Torpedo, Leather Rose Torpedo.
And that was almost, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that was almost simultaneous.
Oh,
like we got news. We got news. We had buyers for Dirt, and we got news it was being discontinued, and it wasn't. I don't feel like it was 30 days later that Leather Rose Petite Corona was announced.
And it's funny,
and
because
it is a direct replacement, right?
Yeah,
the
guy that comes to mind that was buying boxes of Dirt switched over to Leather Rose Petite Corona and still buys a box basically every week.
Yeah,
no complaints, no problems.
Nothing. That's right.
It's just, this was my cigar, this is my new cigar. So it's really interesting to see, and the history of that brand and how it happened, and that's why store exclusives are such an interesting thing to talk about, because I remember a cigar that Aganorsa made back in the day, and I believe it was called Dante. And it was made for a cigar shop up in Richmond, Virginia, I think. And then that cigar blew up. And then there was another brand that it was owned by multiple retailers at different stores, and I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me. Got taken nationally. It's like store exclusives are store exclusives until they get too popular almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Like it's almost... It's probably not certainly done intentionally, but it's almost like test marketing.
Yes,
right.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, the chicken Big Mac's only available over here, but all of a sudden it takes off. Now you get the chicken Big Mac everywhere, right? Like if you've got a store doing that, you're clearly monitoring it, right? A company of that size doesn't let that go out to that store without having some sort of eyeball on the metrics of how it moves.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Let's talk about El Rey for a second. In 2014, when we got this cigar, there was only one pipe and pint store. We didn't have 5 locations. We had no online presence whatsoever at all. And for a single store to buy 1,250 boxes of one cigar and then sell it and have interest from other stores to buy that cigar to sell at their store. And now, 10 years later, yeah, we've got 5 stores, but those 5 stores are only, 3 years? I mean, it's been, 2-3 years since we've had 5 stores?
Yep.
We're down to 20 boxes. And, I mean, we're in Greensboro, North Carolina. We're 20 minutes away from JR Cigars, one of the biggest retailers of cigars in the world.
Yep.
And so to see El Rey sell that well, I'm sure my father thought, maybe we should take it nationally.
Yeah, listen, you're not a company of that size. From my perspective, if I was running one of those companies and you're doing a store exclusive like that, right? We're not the house blend style, right? We know how the house blend stuff does. Like there are other stores in the country selling the same house blends with just different bands on it, right? The one when we talk about El Rey or you're talking about the Deadwood stuff, if you're a big company like Drew, you're a big company like my father, whoever it is, store exclusive or not, and if that owner paid you or not, your name is still attached to it. So it can't go out like a piece of junk, right? It can't just be that kind, just can't be whipped together. It needs to come out quality because it still has their name attached to it, right? It's still their brand. Like we said, this doesn't say pipe and pint anywhere on this band or anything like that, only because you can get it here. This says my father, says El Rey Los Habanos. That is their name on it. So somebody across the country who's getting that holds that to Garcia standards or holds it to Drew's standards. So when you send these things out and you do these exclusive with Fox or whoever it is, Drew's expectation is that is protected. So they want something that's going to be well received to get out there. So I'm sure there's a lot of intention like, hey, let's see how this goes. If this is a popular cigar, I think we need to be thinking about, I don't think there's ever a real, how do I say, delusion. At least there wouldn't be on my part, like with this, that nobody would ever be able to do this ever again. Yeah. Or you couldn't use this name or whatever. It's just not that type of set of circumstances.
Yeah, and I think this is a good segue into history time with Ethan, because it cannot be understated how
cue
important.
The graphic.
Yeah, cue the graphic.
Oh, we don't got to
being
go.
ad read. No, I'm just kidding. It cannot be understated how important this brand is to My Father's Cigars and specifically Pepin Garcia.
Yep.
So here's a little bit of story for you. So back in the early 2000s, Eduardo Fernandez, who owns Aganorsa, he didn't own it then. He was buying fields in Nicaragua from Pedro Martinez, and he decided that he wanted to get into tobacco because he already had his hands in other stuff, but he didn't know a lot about tobacco. So what's he do? He compiles a team of some of the best growers, farmers, rollers, blenders in the world. And one of those people was Jose Pepin Garcia. And I wish that we could pan the camera right now, because right above your head, there's a picture of Pepin Garcia rolling cigars in 1973 in Cuba. And Pepin Garcia was a level 9 Cuban roller in Cuba. And for those who don't know, level 9 is the highest you can get. You are a master roller. You are one of the very, very best. And there are not many rollers that actually achieve that status. So Eduardo actually brings Pepin over from Cuba to Nicaragua to work for him. Well, as things started going, Pepin went to Eduardo and said, I want to make my own cigar. What's he come out with? He comes out with the El Rey de los Habanos, the Don Pepin Garcia line. And the picture above the picture over your head actually has the original artwork
yep.
for El Rey de los Habanos. What does El Rey de los Habanos mean? It means the king of Cuban cigars. So Pepin was basically planting his flag on the fact that he was the king of Cuban cigars. So the brand starts selling well. They're being made at Eduardo's factory using Aganorsa's tobacco, and slowly but surely, as it picks up steam, he starts getting interest in other people who want their cigars made by him. And this is a La Colonia situation, right? This is a brand situation where they want to have their own blends and their own brand. So who does he pick up? He picks up Pete Johnson of Tatuaje Cigars. He picks up Ernesto Padilla of Padilla Cigars. And some of the most famous cigars of the early 2000s come out. The Tatuaje Brown Label, the Padilla 8 and 11, Padilla 1932. These cigars start coming out, and all this time, Pepin is still making his own cigars. But, again, he is using Eduardo's facility, using Eduardo's tobacco, using Eduardo's connections. Well, what had happened was...
What had happened?
There is some speculation that around 2009-ish, that one of two things occurred. Pepin, unbeknownst to Eduardo, transferred the rights of My Father's Cigars and Tabacos Baez over to the company My Father's Cigars without Eduardo's permission.
Oh,
now,
boy.
I forgot to say this. It was so popular that Pepin actually was given a factory in Miami. And that factory's name was, you guessed it, El Rey de los Habanos. It was on Calle Ocho, 8th Street in Miami. Very, very small factory. We're not talking making thousands of cigars a day. We're talking a couple hundred. But making cigars there. And he also had a 50% stake in another factory called Tacuba. And Eduardo had the other percent. Now, so Pepin transfers the names of these and trademarks of these to his own company without Eduardo's permission. And I do not know if this is true, but there's rumor on the street that there was also some stealing of some tobacco for blends from Eduardo that Pepin used. Now, I don't know if that's true. The court documents are still sealed to my knowledge, so we can't go read them. But Eduardo decides that he is going to sue Pepin. So now Pepin does not have access to any of the tobacco he was using, doesn't have the factory, and Eduardo sued him to stop production of all My Father's cigars at Eduardo's factory. So basically, he was trying to kill the brand. Well, the lawsuit ends up getting settled about a year later, and what ends up happening in the lawsuit is Pepin is granted the rights to buy the El Rey de los Habanos factory and the Tacuba factory. So that's what he does. So, with all of that being said, the fascinating thing about all of this is two things. one, El Rey de los Habanos is the name of the factory, the nickname he gave himself, the first blend he came out with. And so the fact that we had the ability and the honor of getting this cigar and selling this cigar exclusively at the Pipe and Pint is mind-numbing when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because my father is one of the biggest producers of cigars and one of the most famous producers of cigars in the world. But number two, these cigars and whatnot and the tobacco that was used, Pepin had to switch. So he didn't have access to that same tobacco anymore. He didn't have access to the Aganorsa tobacco anymore. So he had to start his own farms, grow his own tobacco. He had to source tobacco for a little bit. And the fact that my father has gotten as far as they have 2 number 1 cigars of the year. Tatuaje had multiple cigars in the top 25. Padilla had multiple cigars in the top 25. And all of this happened 14 years ago. And to see how far they've come is mind-boggling. Because, let's be honest, they should have been dead to rights. So, with all that being said, El Rey de los Habanos is something that is obviously very special to the Garcias. And so when we're talking about how we're not surprised that they wanted it back, they wanted to take it nationally, it makes 1,000% sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
And like we said, we're not mad at them whatsoever at all. We're excited to smoke the new one. But it's just so fascinating to see the history of the brand, and it's really cool to say that we were a part of it.
And for everybody who's listening, to answer the question that everybody is thinking right now, yes, there will be a test after that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I mean, that's a good history lesson.
I appreciate that.
At the end of any good history lesson, there is a history test, brother. Have you? I know I haven't. Have you ever had the chance to smoke any original Pepin stuff from the Fernandez days, from the Aganorsa days?
Well, it's funny you should ask.
Really? Okay. Lay it on me.
Fun fact that you may not have known: there was one box of the original El Rey de los Habanos that was upstairs from 2007.
No, I did not know that.
It's not there anymore. Oh. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's.
Did producer Greg steal it?
Producer Greg may have stolen it. He's in the room right now. We're side-eyeing him.
Yeah.
So the funny thing about it is when I smoked it, it had, in my opinion, aged out. And that's one thing that I will say about this blend. The original blend was a Nicaraguan Puro using I believe, Corojo wrapper leaf. This is not a Nicaraguan Puro. It has an Ecuadorian wrapper leaf. But from smoking the original blend when I smoked it to smoking this has aged much better than the original blend, which is weird to say.
Yeah.
Now, the other things that I've smoked, so quick side note
I would
for
just
you.
love to know, and there's obviously no way of ever doing it, but the difference between, let's say, an aged 2-year cigar that Pepin did with the Fernandez family, and then something 2 years old after it'd gone to his old stuff, what that difference is like, how similar it is, what the vibe is like. And I'm, if you're listening and you were able to do that, or anybody was able to do that, maybe some of the folks at My Father Cigars, I would, send me an email. I would love to know what that answer to that is.
Yeah. So the what I will say before I say all of this and tell you about what I've smoked, I did not smoke any of this fresh. I have no comparison of what it was like fresh from Aganorsa to what it was fresh from My Father's old factory.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Everything that I've smoked was aged, and I referenced my buddy Mike in the last podcast. Good friend of mine, got me in the Tatuaje Saints and Sinners Club. When COVID happened, the reason that we became friends is because he found out about El Rey and he found out about La Colonia.
Yep.
And he wanted both of them. He was just getting into cigars. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, what do you have old that's upstairs in the vault?" And we had some old Pepin stuff in the vault. Now, none of it was Aganorsa made stuff. It was, a little bit after that.
Yeah, we had some stuff after that. I remember all that stuff.
But he wanted to try all of that because he never tried it before. Well, he and I become friends and talk regularly and still do today. But our goal during COVID, and I don't even know where this came from, was to find old Aganorsa-made Pepin products. And so we find this cigar shop in Honolulu, Hawaii, that has all of these old cigars on their website.
I remember this now. Yep.
Mike befriends the guy, and we get original boxes of all this stuff. Mike also finds original made Padilla 1932s.
Yep.
And Tat Havana 6, Tat Capaguan Guapos. We had original Don Pepin blue labels. We had, just all this crazy stuff that was Aganorsa tobacco. And the one thing that I'll say is that Aganorsa tobacco, as you and I both know, has a very distinct flavor.
Very.
That flavor does not go away with time. I smoked an original Tatuaje brown label Taínos. I think it was Taínos. Maybe it was Unicos. Either way, it was original Tatuaje brown label from Aganorsa. It tasted like Aganorsa. Now, I'm not saying it was better than what's on the market right now. Obviously, Tatuaje is one of, if not my favorite brand.
Yep.
But it had a very distinct Aganorsa flavor profile. And the thing about Aganorsa's tobacco is that it's very strong, and Pepin is known for making strong cigars. The pepper was still there even after 10 years.
Really?
It was absolutely crazy. Now, in some of the lighter blends like the Capaguan Guapos, not so much, but it wasn't meant to be a big, peppery, full-bodied cigar. But, having the opportunity to try and smoke all of that stuff is something that I do not take for granted. I do not have any of them left because, let's be honest, they probably should have been smoked 5 years prior, but they definitely needed to be smoked now.
That's something that while they're not going to go bad if properly cared for, there's a bit of a shelf life for overall flavor and everything like that.
Same thing with this cigar.
Yeah.
This cigar had much more spice to it when it first came out.
Much more spice. So I was just going to say that. I was going to ask you, do you remember it in 2014?
I do.
Yeah,
I do. It was had a great spice up front. It was beautifully creamy. It had a great cocoa note. It had a little bit of leather to it. It had some great citrus and floral notes on the retro hill. And a lot of those notes are still there, but they're much more nuanced.
The one I would say is still very much there for me. I think the floral still hits really prominently versus the other. Now, again, 2014 is 10 years ago, math guy. But I do remember at that time, I was here. That was a huge event. That was maybe the biggest event the Pipe and Pint had ever hosted.
It was,
ever. There was people
was exhausted.
Everywhere. But I do remember it. It never had as much of the pepper spice that some of the other, not Tatuaje, but the other My Father stuff have, right?
Yeah.
But it had it. Like, it was noticeable, especially on the initial light of it.
It was a My Father cigar.
Yeah.
And yes, it was medium body, but Pepin's known for spice. It had the spice.
That is probably the number one thing that has mellowed out, and I hate to use the term lost, but in reality, that may be what it is. But the floral still kicks on this thing. And this is not a cigar that you smoke now, and you're like, oh, you do not say this cigar has aged out yet. Now,
I would venture to say that this cigar has another 5 years.
Yeah, it's going to suck when it does because it's going to be a bummer the first couple of times you have them. You have one, and you're like, oh, no, does it happen? Then you have another one, and you're like, oh, shit, it's happened. But it's not going to change how awesome it was to have this cigar for that period of time.
No, absolutely not. And,
and it's going to be cool to get the new one in.
Yeah,
right?
it's going to be great.
Cool and maybe they'll want us to autograph boxes for them.
They want you to autograph boxes.
No,
big autograph guy.
Listen, anybody out there wants my autograph, you let me know. It's a dream of mine to give a legitimate autograph to somebody.
Is it?
Come on. Who doesn't want to give a legitimate autograph?
When I worked at the magistrate's office, I worked on my signature because I had to sign so many documents.
Signing somebody's bail is not an autograph. Okay? That's not what that is. Okay,
still cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this cigar, it's just good. Now, the one question I have for you before we move on: do you prefer it more now, or when it was new?
I prefer it more now. And the reason is, this is going to sound, hang with me here for a second, but it's going to kind of be around a bit. But what it was before, okay, even though it was definitely unique in the My Father catalog or portfolio, whatever you want to say, because it was just very mild compared. If I wanted to get what it was before, I feel like I can go out and get it.
That's an
Right?
That's an interesting perspective.
Do you know what I mean though? Like
absolutely
if I
do.
wanted that vibe,
You just smoke a Pepin
it
vintage.
would not be the same.
Yeah.
It would not be the same. But what you just said is a fact. What it was before hits very much like the vintage does.
Yeah, yeah.
You just can't replicate what we're smoking right now.
No.
It's impossible.
No, it's 10 years.
Some people try to do it. They try to pretend like, oh, it's the same with, we've circled back to the last episode. It's the same for your bourbons, the same for my wines. Time can't be replicated.
It's funny you bring that up because, one thing that happens in the alcohol industry, and I say alcohol industry because it happens in wine and bourbon, is companies will try to speed up the aging process while putting in staves, like pieces of oak, to allow more surface contact, more contact with the liquid inside. And yeah, it will give a different flavor profile, but something that's aged for 10 years is going to be distinctly different than something that was aged with 4 years and then they put some staves in a barrel for another 3 months or whatever. Yeah. So I don't know which one I like more, if I'm being completely honest with you. I have such fond memories of the old one going back and forth to college that it's hard to disassociate that from the cigar.
Yep.
But every time I smoke one, I'm still amazed by what it has to offer. And if anyone out there has never tried it, you should, first of all. But if you have tried it, like I said, there's only 20 boxes left. 18 boxes left.
Don't you even think about advertising 20
That's
boxes.
right. And so, it's such a, I keep using the word honor, but it really is, and to me at least, an honor to have been a part of this story. And I wish we could share it with everybody.
It's one of those things. It just holds a special place in both of our hearts for different reasons, right? You had it when you were going to college and everything like that. It connected you back to the shop, back to Greensboro. It was the linchpin of Cigar when I took over the shop, and it's carried, since then. We're out of the original run of La Colonia, so that doesn't exist anymore. We've done other La Colonia projects, but this cigar was carried from the moment that I was able to take over and purchase the Pipe and Pint, and continues on. And it's going to be, it's going to be a sad day when the last one goes out of the shop.
Yeah, and real quick, for those of you that don't know, and I don't know that many people know this, I remember when I worked here part-time and you were just a customer. Mm-hmm. And we'd once in a blue moon get to talk and smoke cigars together. I'll never forget when I told you the Cubs were going to win the 2016 World Series on the porch, and you told me I was wrong. But
did that happen?
It Buddy did it. But I'll never forget. It's been interesting to me to see the transition that you've had with the cigars that you like, because I know what the Don Pepin Blue Label original meant to you, and how it was one of your favorite cigars of all time to where you are now. And again, this cigar is a part of your cigar history, your cigar story, if you want to call it that. It's a part of mine. It's a part of the shops.
It intertwines. It connects us all, back to the same spot, which is the Pipe and Pipe, which is a place we love. But yeah, it's a special cigar, and it's gonna be cool when you see it in the new pack. Not gonna lie, hand up, I like the old packaging better.
Oh, yep. No offense to my father.
I love our band better.
It's just classy, man.
It just
looks good.
It screams excellence.
It does scream excellence.
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So, I mean, we've only seen the pictures. We obviously haven't seen anything in person. There's a good chance that you and I are going to get to try it in New Orleans, would be my guess. We'll get a chance to try it.
We're going to be hypercritical.
Hypercritical. The most critical. I mean, I don't see a way we wouldn't be, but again, it's going to be so different that it's going to be an interesting exercise in doing it.
Yeah, I would say this too. There's nothing better than reminiscing about anything, but cigars specifically, than when you're smoking a cigar and drinking something. Because I've enjoyed this more than I thought I would. But moving on. So the other State of the Union topic that we wanted to talk about was availability of cigars.
So this was the one thing I wanted to talk about, because this is really grinding my gears segment for the Family Guy fans out there, but it's something that we've seen. You know, we're keeping politics out of it. Election was yesterday. We ran that full cycle, 20 to 24, with COVID and that whole set of circumstances, which caused a whole host of issues. It may have helped some people disguise some issues that they were having, but cigar availability has been, along with pricing, it's been the number one concern of the average consistent cigar smoker that we have. Why don't you have this? When is this coming? Why, are you guys not ordering it? What's going on? Listen, we're in retail. That's the nature of the business. We're not experiencing anything different than anybody, but there's some things that we can talk about for which we believe contribute to that factor, right?
Yeah, and I'll say this before we get into it. The behind the counter perspective that we have has been interesting to see and analyze and whatnot, because when cigars started to become a little bit more scarce, people didn't believe us when we told them we can't get it. But as people's backstock and inventory started to deplete, they were like, oh man, these guys aren't lying to me. Nobody has my cigar. And it's just funny to see, because I mean, I get it. There's a lack of trust sometimes. We try and do our best to alleviate that here and be upfront and transparent with our customers. But I get it. From a consumer perspective, they're probably thinking, oh, they're just making excuses. Well, after 2 years of not having your cigar or only getting it once every 6 months, it's like, and then checking online and whatnot, it's like, oh yeah, these guys aren't lying.
Listen, we've had all sorts of discussions about this with customers, but the biggest thing is always, well, X has it, why don't you have it? And my always comeback is this, because I was like, because X doesn't sell anything.
Yeah.
They have it because they got it at the same time we did, and we sell cigars here, and they have it. And that's not a shot at any specific. X is not a specific shop or anything like that, so don't think that. But that is a lot of it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm sorry, that shop doesn't move cigars the way we move cigars. We've got 5 stores. Things hustle out of here. We do a great job on pricing and everything like that. So we had a lot of customers who just don't believe, and that's okay. Listen, I was on that side of the counter. You were on that side of the counter at one point in time. You got something that you want, and you smoke all the time, and you want it. You don't understand why it's not there, But we try to educate and be honest with everybody who asks about this stuff. Nobody's feeding anybody a line of bull.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean? We don't tell you something that's not true just to move you along. We'd love to sometimes. We'd love to. May tell you a line of bull about something else to get you to move along.
Yeah, I mean, if I do my best, like if I forget to order something for somebody, I tell them, look, man,
We
it's
tell them
my
up front,
fault.
listen, like, our
It
fault,
is
we'll get it
my
over.
fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
I messed up. I'm sorry. But I think of, and this is, let me say this before we get into this. We're not taking shots at anybody because these companies cannot help these problems.
No, and that's something very much I wanted to talk about because, you know, we talked about Perdomo last week, and I had an opportunity last year to go to Perdomo factories in Nicaragua. And when I came back and told you guys, like, listen, I don't want to hear any complaints about back orders anymore. Like, we can discuss what we need and everything like that. But we were there, Robbie and I were there watching them roll as many cigars as humanly possible in the given amount of time that they can do. And they were doing it over and over and over again. And like I told you, like, if we have something back ordered or not available from them specifically, that was not from a lack of trying.
Yeah.
They are pumping them out. They have a whole host of issues to deal with in Central America that we don't have here.
It's a third world country.
It's a third world country. Nicaragua is one of the poorest and depleted countries in our hemisphere.
Absolutely.
So we've seen different issues.
Yeah.
One of the biggest issues we've seen, and manufacturers will tell us, which I wholeheartedly believe to be true, is the lack of employees. They're seeing an exodus of rollers and workers like they've never seen before. They're traveling north out of the country. They're headed to Honduras. They're headed farther north, and they're continuing on. And these are people that... And the thing to understand is you cannot just replace an upper-level quality cigar roller with just somebody who walks in off the street.
Yeah,
it's impossible.
Listen, this is an open offer. $20 to anybody that can walk off the street that's never rolled a cigar before, and you roll me a perfect cigar.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
I'll give you 100 tries and it's not going to happen.
No,
man.
absolutely not. It's such a finite thing, and the human element of it is something that is forgotten. Like, we're in such a time and day and age when so many things are mass-produced and mass-manufactured, and these companies are making thousands of cigars a day, millions of cigars a year. But guess what? They're still made by human hands. There's no AI. There's no machines. There's no robots. There's no nothing. It is human hands making these
Listen,
products.
we were standing there and we're watching them roll, and, you know, Nick or Arthur can fact check me on this, but I believe it was the top quality rollers could do about 400 cigars in their shift, in their day. And when I tell you that they are going nonstop, that's not hyperbole. It was one right after the other. Like, we're walking through the rolling room, we're impeding their progress. They're looking at us like, hey man, like, you are keeping me.
Get out the way.
These employees are paid by the piece, not by the hour. So they are paid to get shit done. And we are impeding that. So they're looking at you like, hey, this is cool, right? All right, you've seen it. Move along, because if you keep me from getting to my 400, you are keeping me from getting paid. There weren't empty seats, anything like that. But so they're just going. COVID caused a demand for cigars, as we know. That a boom of cigars. That these companies are forecasting out, like any good company does. You forecast. You don't want to make not enough, but you also don't want to make too many. COVID caused this boom where these companies were just not forecasting out. There was no way to predict and see what that kind of demand was going to do for things.
No, and they have the tobacco, right?
Yeah.
It's not an issue of supply. It's an issue of meeting the demand, right? I wanted to bring up the unfortunate number one culprit that we hear about on an almost daily basis, and that's LFD, right?
Yep.
So not only do they have roller issues, they also have tobacco issues. So, and when I say tobacco issues, I don't mean binder and filler tobacco. They have wrapper issues.
That's your number one tobacco issue.
Yeah, it is. And for a multitude of reasons. With LFD, their Maduro crop in the Dominican Republic, there was an article in Cigar Aficionado about a hailstorm taking out some Opus tobacco from Arturo Fuente. With LFD, they had an issue with their Maduro wrapper leaf. And so anything Maduro, DL700 Maduro, Cabinet Maduros, number 5s, Colorado Oscuros, literally any other size, they literally cannot make it. It's not for lack of wanting to or trying. They just can't, because they cannot get the wrapper leaf for it. And when you're talking Maduro wrapper leaf, Maduro isn't a type of tobacco. It's the level of fermentation that the tobacco is taken to, and it takes the longest outside of Oscuro, right? Oscuro is the darkest. Maduro is a little bit lighter than that. That takes time, and you can't rush it.
It takes time, and you can't rush it, obviously. And then what you see happen is this huge increase of demand, and we have to go to the well a little bit, right? We have to pull from what we thought was going to be next year's wrapper leaf and start making for this year. So there's a robbing Peter to pay Paul set of circumstances. And then you start stacking other things on top of that, logistical issues, the roller issues. This is not an issue for manufacturers, but it's an issue for us, which is the emerging markets issue, right? China, Middle East, Europe. These are areas of the world for which their demand has,
let's be honest. Dubai has their own Opus. It's such a big demand.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Like it's hard to understate like the demand of, because Cuba sees it, and that's something that we don't deal with obviously because of the embargo. But like Cuban cigars aren't available right now online in other markets because everything is going to China. Same thing with bourbon. Yep. Same thing with futures in Bordeaux with wine. Like China is buying up so much product right now.
There's so much demand there. The population is so large that I don't think anybody here can wrap their mind around it.
No, and Enter Tobacco just happened, which is like TPE or not TPE, PCA here in America. Enter Tobacco just happened, and these companies who have never been to Enter Tobacco or haven't gone much are increasing their presence there. I think about Aganorsa, Terrence and Fabian both went to Enter Tobacco.
Yeah.
Guess what? There is not one but 2 Supreme Leafs that are exclusive overseas now.
Yep.
And that's just one company that we're talking about here. And like we said earlier, these companies are in the business to make money. They don't care if it's American dollars or another currency.
These are worldwide companies. We're talking about companies making cigars worldwide. Prestige worldwide. In Central America, they're not, some of them are based in the United States, but a lot of these are worldwide companies. So I would not knock that in a moment. I mean, we are in the business. Like if you find a market that has demand for the product that you make, it's silly not to do that.
It's suicide to
but the reality is shit flows downhill, if you will. So it falls down to us, right? Like
it does.
We just mentioned roller 400 cigars a day. That's 400 cigars a day, no matter what. So if 200 of those cigars got to go somewhere else, that only means 200 can come here. It's just a fact.
It's logistics.
It's logistics. Ask Bib Brown.
That's right. I think about too, like this is not a one issue topic either. I think about what's happening in the Connecticut River Valley right now. So we saw Roma Craft earlier this year with what is arguably their most popular cigar, the Cro-Magnon, which had a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper on it. They could not get that wrapper leaf. So what they do, they decided that they were not going to cease production on that cigar. They were going to completely reblend it. That cigar has a Pennsylvanian broadleaf wrapper leaf on it now. Like, they had to meet the demand, and so
I give them a lot of credit for doing that. By the way,
I do too, man.
Because that's not an easy decision to make.
No, it's your most popular cigar.
And not only is it your most popular cigar, it's a well-known cigar overall.
Yeah, and you change
Right?
it completely, because they said they're not just changing the wrapper leaf; they're changing the whole freaking blend.
Yeah, I give them a ton of credit for doing that because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know what the reception is going to be. You don't know if there's going to be blowback from your consumer base on it. So to do that, let everybody know that you're doing it, which I appreciate instead of trying to pass it off as something that it's not. But yeah, I give them a bunch of credit for doing that.
I do too, and honestly, this is just me speaking personally. I like the new one better than the old one, so it worked out.
You're not
for
the
'em.
first person to say that, yeah.
But that's not always the case, unfortunately. No. Let's talk Connecticut broadleaf for a second. So that's grown in America.
Yep.
Where there are labor laws. There is a minimum wage. The taxes are what they are. And there is only a very small growing region. It's like a wine region. Napa Valley's only so big. Well, guess what? So is the Connecticut River Valley. Well, guess what else has Connecticut River Valley tobacco on it? Arturo Fuentes Maduros, Foundation Tabernacle, Liga Privada, Undercrown.
Yep.
The list goes on and on. And obviously it's all getting bought up. The tobacco goes to the highest bidder, which guess what, by the way, that is passed along to the consumer. So we can talk about cigar prices later, but that's one of the reasons cigar prices are going up.
That's right.
And eventually that tobacco is going to run out. So what do? Pennsylvania broadleaf is very different from Connecticut broadleaf. It has a very different flavor profile to it. So like you said, kudos to Roma Craft for knocking it out of the park when it comes to reblending the Cro-Magnon. But we talked about Foundation on the first episode. Nick Maleo with Tabernacle has got to be like, what am I going to do? I either have to allocate the product more heavily, or it's just going to be one of those things when we get it. It's going to sell out immediately. The consumers have to buy it when it's available, and it is what it is. Because it's not going to get fixed anytime soon. And that's the thing about tobacco that people forget. Tobacco is not made in a plant. It is grown in a field, and
technically made in a plant, but yeah, I got you. Dad joke.
Clever.
But yes, I know what you mean.
It's not made overnight.
We're not firing up the assembly line to roll out a bunch of more broadleaf. It takes time. It takes, workers. It takes weather cooperation.
Yeah, like we said, hailstorm in Dominican Republic. Guess what? All the Opus tobacco was taken out. Fire at the warehouse. Guess what? All that fire is taken out. And that's not a shot at Fuente. Aganorsa just had a fire.
Yep.
Guess what? Supreme Leaf's delayed. Aganorsa's 25th anniversary is delayed.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
So
nobody can do anything about it.
Extenuating circumstances that, there's not literally nothing you can do about it.
No, I mean, and we've only talked about a couple companies here. And obviously at the Pipe and Pint, we don't carry every company. But this issue is it's an industry-wide issue. Every single company is dealing with it. And
some better than others.
They are. And as demand goes up, we've seen, we could talk about this all night, and we're not going to, but I think about Warped. We love Kyle. We love Warped. We've talked about that before. Kyle has a lot of cigars made from Aganorsa. Well, guess what? Aganorsa makes a lot of cigars for themselves and other people. And Kyle has to keep up with the demand of his own cigar. So what's he do? He's going to another company, La Isla, in another country, working with those guys because they have the tobacco, they have the people, and it is a fight or flight, right? You're either going to say it is what it is, and I'm just going to deal with it personally, or you're going to find a solution to your problem and you're going to keep making cigars.
And we talked about this earlier. These manufacturers are in business for themselves. They're not in business for you, the person that they may make cigars for you. That may sound harsh. It may come off and you may be like, but it's just reality is.
That's business in general.
In the circumstance that we've been in the last few years, they've got to prioritize the cigars that they make that are their own lines. That's their bread and butter. And you're going to get knocked down the rung. So it's up to you to make that decision. So The guys at Roma had to make a hard decision. They made it. Kyle's had to make a hard decision. He's made it.
And let's look at
everybody's not as smart as those guys to do that. And they look at these manufacturers a lot of times like, well, what am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do? Yep. Well, I'm sorry. You own this brand. You own this company. That's for you to decide.
And let's look at the other side of the coin for just a second with people that decided it's going to be what it's going to be. Arturo Fuente, right? Yep. Arturo Fuente, notoriously now, throughout COVID, had no cigars. No Hemingway. They'd catch up on Hemingway. Well, now there's no Chateaus. Okay, we're caught up on Chateaus. Well, now there's no short filler Exquisitos or Cubanitos. Like, they had issues all throughout COVID, and they decided it's just going to be what it's going to be. And Arturo Fuente, in a different boat than Roma Craft and Ward.
Yep,
one of the biggest manufacturers in the world. So I get why they did that. But from a retailer's perspective, and also thinking as a consumer, consumers change their buying habits when they can't get their own cigars.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we've seen Arturo Fuente, which still has a very pronounced presence in our humidor, and we have a very good relationship with them. We're not selling as many Fuente as we used to, but it's not because we don't want to. It's because the consumer changed
less customers coming through.
No, it's because the consumers changed their buying habit because they couldn't get their Double Chateau Connecticut's for a year.
If nobody has what you smoke, right? If we don't have it and nobody else has it, you have a decision to make. And we've talked about this a bunch. If you smoke a box of cigars a month or 2 boxes of cigars a month, you don't just stop smoking cigars because they don't have your Chateaus. You look for alternatives. And if that if that alternative starts to impress you from a quality standpoint, a pricing standpoint, whatever it may be, a reliability standpoint, you're going to continue. Cigar smokers, a good chunk, maybe I would say even a vast majority of cigar smokers, are habitual people.
Yeah.
There are the cigar geeks, the guys who will go out, they want to try this, they want to try that. And even the guys, habitual, this and that. But their bread and butter is their bread and butter. And once they start on it, they stay on it. So if you were a smoker of X for however many years, and then this came about and they don't have it anymore, they're trying to catch up. Oh, we're going to have it. And you move on to something like, hey, that's our job here in this shop, is to put you in something that you're going to like.
Let us reiterate here. We're in the business to make money. Just because we don't have your cigar doesn't mean we don't want your business.
That's right.
And so our job as tobacconists is to find you an alternative, because we know, being in the industry, you can't find your cigar.
And not just any alternative, an alternative you're going to like.
Yep.
Something that's going to be comparable. It is our job to have good customer service and to put you in something that you're going to enjoy. And then if you start enjoying that and you start buying that, I'm sorry, manufacturer, that's not our problem. Our problem is,
our business is to make money just like yours is.
Yeah, that's right.
It's you hate to say it's cutthroat because the cigar industry is such a family-oriented and close-knit industry. But at the end of the day,
you got to do what you got to do because
business.
They will go buy their cigars somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is. And I mean, it's COVID was such an anomaly, and I pray to God we never experience it ever again, anything like it in our lifetime. But it happened, and it did change things, and it changed the buying habits of consumers. And, something else that we don't really talk about, but during COVID specifically, a lot of people wanted to shop online. We were very fortunate in our state to be able to stay open and not be affected by mandatory closings and whatnot. And so we had to do our damnedest to make sure that those consumers kept coming back here, because it was just as easier for them to stay on their couch, not risk getting sick, and buy their cigars online. So guess what? What'd we do? We're going to be competitive with pricing. We're going to offer that customer service. We're going to make sure that even if we don't have your cigar, we're going to have a cigar that you like, and you may like it even more.
I remember distinctly you and I sitting in this lounge, smoking cigars with our laptops heating going, because we're pushed to get our website to a point where we could offer everything that we've got online, but not only that, that we could offer it for in-store pickup.
Yeah.
Right? So we had customers who could buy from us who were in town, right? Who would normally just walk in, who didn't want to do that at the time, which totally understand, who could buy something. We could have it packaged and ready to go. We knew it was for store pickup. They would pull up front and we put it in there. So we busted our butts to get everything on that website and get a very functional and usable website going. It put a lot of pressure on us, but we knocked it out because that's what you had to do.
And guess what? People still do that. We still
Absolutely.
have people
We still have
that
plenty of in-store pickup people.
in-store pickup. They drive up and we know their cars.
Yep.
And we go out and give it to them. And that's not a political thing. They're not still scared of COVID. That is a buying habit.
Buying habit now. That's right.
That is a psychological thing that people have. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
can go on the Pipe and Pints website. I can buy
Yeah.
my box of cigars, pay for it, and Ethan, Jason, Robbie, whomever is going to come outside, hand it
Did you
to
say
me through the
Robbie?
window.
You mean milk guy?
Milk guy. Sorry. Oh, man. Pulled the cloak back. My bad, dude. And we're going to hand it through the window, and you're going to be on your way. It was great.
Yeah, it's like a
But
drive-thru.
we had to
It's
bust
like a
our
drive-thru.
ass to do that, to
Yeah.
get that done. I remember us going through, downloading every image we could get, descriptions of it, we get pricing to be competitive with it, because that's just the nature of how it had to be done at that point in time.
And just like these manufacturers, you have a decision to make. We had a decision to make. We either lay down and take it or we fight.
That's right.
And as retailers, as business people, as whatever term you want to use there, we decided that we were going to fight like hell and we were going to make sure that we made it through this and made it through COVID. And thankfully for us, we're not necessarily dealing with the impacts of COVID anymore, but a lot of these manufacturers are.
They certainly still
because they
Yeah.
still don't have rollers.
Yep.
These rollers are leaving and going to other countries, or they're going to do something else. They still don't have tobacco. They still have all of these issues. Let's not talk about boxes.
Boxes,
right?
yep.
Boxes are a big issue. We were talking to one of our reps the other day, and a cigar that we were looking forward to this year is not going to be coming out because they don't have the boxes yet.
Yeah.
They can't help that. That is not the cigar is
That's
ready.
out of their hands.
The cigar is ready. The bands, so much of these things are made by other people. There's so few companies like Perdomo that are vertically integrated, like we've talked about, that have their own box facility, their band facility. These other companies don't have the ability to control that stuff, much less these boutique companies who, like Tatuaje, they're having their cigars made by another manufacturer who has to worry about their own cigars first
It's a whole
before
nother
they
layer
worry
of
about
things to concern
somebody
yourself
else's
with.
cigars. There's so much that goes into it, and as a consumer, you have to be able to adapt. You can be mad all you want that you can't get your cigar,
But it's
it's
pointless.
nobody's. It's no one person's fault. It is just the time that we live in right now. And there's nothing that Nick Perdomo, Nick Maleo, George Padron, there's nothing that anybody can do about it.
There's nothing you can do about it. And it's near impossible to play that kind of catch up when you're running on the razor's edge to begin with,
Yeah.
right? If that person who's rolling has got to roll with that level of intensity to get those 400 done, how do you ever play catch up? Right?
Yeah.
How do you continue to build back? So it's just hard work and it's over and over again, but it's a long uphill battle. And I'm gonna be completely honest. When you throw in the emerging market stuff, you throw in the tobacco issues and stuff like that, I don't think that you're going to find yourself back to a pre-2020 set of circumstances. I don't think ever.
No, I agree with you.
Because those emerging markets are not, they're emerging for a reason. They're not stopping. The growth there is exponential. And like we said, you can't fault it for going there. So that demand has to be met. And if you can't bring more and more, if you can't bring in a percentage of people that matches the percentage of increase that you're talking about, that availability suffers no matter what. What we hope is that the quality doesn't suffer along with it.
And unfortunately, it has
We've
in
seen
some
it.
cases.
We've seen it. Now, again,
I'm not going to shout at
no,
anybody out
we're not
there.
doing
That's
that. We're not doing that.
no.
But we have, and you hate to say it, like you understand to a point, like you got people to support. You need cigars out to sell to retailers, for them to sell to consumers, so you continue to support the people who work in your factories. But when you rush the stuff out, you have issues. We've seen aging issues. We've seen construction issues. We've seen packaging issues. Like,
what's the old Fuente saying? You can't rush the hands of time.
That's
it's
right.
on their ashtrays.
It's on their ashtrays. Yeah,
like,
that's right. That's right.
You literally,
that's right.
you can't do it. And we cannot understate the fact that what we sell, literally every single product that we sell in our stores, is a handmade product.
Handmade product.
Like, there's already a variability of screw-ups, mess-ups involved in this, and some companies do better at controlling that than others. We talked about Perdomo draw testing every single cigar. Not every company does that. The companies that do that have a more consistent product, and their quality is maintained a little bit better. But even then, it's still a handmade product. Like,
that's why. So, for those listening, you're going to Nicaragua in February.
I am. I can't wait. We're going to have a whole podcast episode.
We're going to have a whole podcast episode about that, because I'm super excited for you to see this stuff. Because, and I don't know who you're going to go on the tour with yet, whether it's going to be Arthur or if it's going to be Nick. You know, we went with Arthur. I thought it was fantastic. I kind of hope you get to go with him, because I wanted to get the kind of the same perspective. But you'll see what I'm talking about, how thin the margin of error is. And it can't be any other way, because of it being a handmade, time-constrained product. But, I mean, you're going to see these boxes get made. I mean, these guys are flying through these things. Not in a bad quality standpoint, but we talked about in the last episode, when you're going to see that draw test and that area of the rolling room, when they're going through that process, okay, you're going to look at these cigars and you're going to think to yourself, there's not a darn thing wrong with that cigar, but there is something wrong with that cigar. My concern when it comes to stuff like this is companies like Perdomo catch that. There are some other companies, I believe, that don't mind that cigar that they take back going into a box.
Listen, I will never forget this, and I'm not going to say the company's name. I will never forget opening up a box of cigars that was labeled Maduro, and there's a very significant thing that is added to this cigar to signify that it is Maduro. Like, it is, you cannot miss it. And when I open it up, it's Habano in the box. Like, I can't, I really, I have trouble sometimes reasoning with how that even happens, but it does.
Well, we know why it happens. I mean, in reality, we know why it happens.
Yeah.
It's from a lack of effort and accountability. Listen, there's one company that I won't shout out because I don't want to deal with the BS that comes along with it, where we ordered a box of cigars and we got half the box of cigars and the box was open.
Yeah. Let me say this again. We ordered a box of cigars from somebody, a whole box of cigars. They charged us. They charged the credit card for that whole box of cigars. And we get the package, we open it up, and there's an open box that has 4 cigars in it.
That's it.
It's unbelievable. We won't shout this company out. We saw a picture the other day of a cigar that had a ball of aluminum foil
in it.
I have pulled Sour Patch Kid wrappers out of cigars before. Like, it's crazy to say, but
listen, shout you out if you're sweetening your cigars with Sour Patch Kids.
I love Sour Patch Kids. But it's crazy to think about these things. But at the end of the day, when you really sit down and digest it and think about it, these are handmade products. They're people that they may not be like you and I, but they're still people making these cigars, and errors and mistakes and oversights are going to happen. And that just continues to contribute to the problem of availability like we're talking about.
Yep. It's a good way to wrap it up, because you've heard the saying in the past, there's not an amount of money in the world that's ever bought a drop of time, right? And that's what makes this El Rey so good, right? It's been aged. It was crafted perfectly when it was done. It's even better now. And I can't wait till the new one comes out, Dick. Try it.
No, I can't either. And the one saying that I hold on to more now than I ever have, because I do have a child now, is time is a thief.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why we need to live in the present. We deal with the issues that we come across. We deal with the problems that arise, and we adapt and we overcome, and we keep doing what we're doing. And that's not a testament to El Rey. Thankfully, El Rey we haven't had any problems with El Rey, obviously. But at the end of the day, it has been 10 years. Our time as being the face of El Rey de los Habanos has come to an end, and that's okay.
That's right.
We're okay with that. We're excited for the future. And this is not a doom and gloom episode. The cigar industry is still in a really good state when it comes to regulations and when it comes to innovation and all of these other things. So we're not trying to make this a doom and gloom episode by any stretch whatsoever at all. We just want you to understand what is actually happening in the industry, because it gets brushed under the rug a lot of times.
That's right. That's right. So we appreciate it. I think a great way. I think we're going to have some sort of event when it comes down to the last El Rey. I don't want it to be a send off, but I think it would be a great way to get our customers together, to have the last little bit go out to people that we know really appreciate it. So
absolutely.
We've had a great time through 3 episodes, right?
Absolutely.
So we appreciate everybody who's been listening. Like the kids like to say, smash that like button.
Smash it.
Smash the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Between Two Burns, episode 3. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate you, buddy.
See you soon, guys.